Warhammer 40K Rogue Trader is a brand new sci-fi RPG with an incredible amount of depth in gameplay and character building. I had the chance to play Rogue Trader for a little over 25 hours before release, and I made a lot of mistakes along the way. So I'm here to help you avoid the same errors that I made so that you can have the best start possible in the game. In this video, we're going to explore 10 tips and tricks I wish I knew before playing Rogue Trader. Big shout out to Owlcat Games for sponsoring this video and giving me early access to the game. If you're interested in checking out Rogue Trader, be sure to click on the link in the description. The game is available today on PC, Mac, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series S and X, so buckle up, grab some iced coffee, and let's dive into the tips. Number 1. Always equip grenades and consumables in advance. The combat in Rogue Trader is squad-based and turn-based. In many encounters, you will be outnumbered greatly, so AoE attacks with abilities and grenades are incredibly useful. But you need to actually equip these items manually to your characters before you get into combat. Each character has 4 consumable slots for items like medpacks and grenades. I cannot tell you how many times I got into combat, moved my character into position for a grenade toss, only to realize I didn't have any grenades equipped.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer?
I recommend checking through your inventory after every encounter to make sure you re-equip important items. This is also a good time to equip better weapons or gear that you may have looted during your most recent combat encounter. Number 2. Tips for movement. This is going to be a grab bag of smaller tips related to movement, so maybe this list is more than 10 things I wish I knew. The most recent turn-based combat game I played was Baldur's Gate 3, and compared to that title, movement works quite a bit differently in Rogue Trader. For starters, in 99% of cases, you cannot move after making an attack. So if you take your attack at the beginning of your turn before moving your character, you're basically going to be locked into that same position. This took me a while to get used to. Now there are some workarounds with certain character builds. For instance, warriors have a charge ability that allows them to rush towards an enemy without consuming points. So this can be a way to cover some extra ground even after attacking. And you can activate a charge ability even if you can't make it into melee range to attack another enemy. I found this incredibly helpful in closing distance with snipers in particular. I also recommend picking up some talents, such as swift movements, that increase your movement range. Because your base movement speed for most characters is only like 6 tiles, which doesn't get you very far. One other important thing to note is that you can preview your attacks before actually moving your character. Double-clicking on the battlefield will move your character. However, if you single-click and then hover over your attack or ability of choice, you can preview your character's line of sight and chance to hit, which is super helpful. Number 3. Beware the perils of the warp. Psykers are basically the sorcerers of Warhammer 40K, harnessing powers of the warp to launch psychic attacks on their opponents. Psykers are incredibly fun to use in combat, but there are some potential downsides to be aware of. As you use your Psyker abilities, you increase the Veil Degradation meter, which is depicted by the purple bar at the bottom of your screen. This meter stacks cumulatively the more you use your Psyker abilities, and if you have multiple Psykers in your roster, it can fill up incredibly fast. Once Veil Degradation reaches the max limit, you greatly increase your chance of triggering Perils of the Warp, which is essentially like wild magic from D&D, except it's pretty much always a bad thing. Perils of the Warp can trigger negative debuffs, including sudden death for the caster, and sometimes you'll even spawn horrifying enemies onto the battlefield as they break through the warp into real space, angry and ready to kill us. If you plan to spam Psyker abilities like me, then I recommend picking up some talents that reduce the amount of Veil Degradation you trigger with your attacks. Also, navigators like Cassia can even pick up a talent which decreases Veil Degradation whenever she uses her navigator abilities. Number 4. Setting up formations. The default formation for your party has all your characters arranged in a single file line, which is less than ideal once you have a full group of companions. However, you can actually customize your formation by heading into the options menu, selecting formation, and picking one of the alternative presets, or even setting up a custom formation. You can also rearrange your party members by clicking and dragging on their portraits at the top of the screen. I recommend putting your melee characters at the front of the line and your casters in the back for reasons that are probably obvious. Number 5. Tips for character building and respec options. The amount of choices you can make when leveling up your characters can be overwhelming, so Outcat has provided some recommendations, denoted by the thumbs up next to talents and skills. But don't just blindly take the recommended picks, because you may be missing out on important and powerful upgrades for your build. In my playthrough, I was opting for a Psyker/Officer build, but most of the recommended options for talents only took into account the officer-related buffs. So I completely missed out on the very important Psi rating upgrade for several levels because I didn't take my time to read through all the abilities. Each time you level up, I recommend skimming through the entire list of available talents or upgrades because sometimes the most powerful options are down at the bottom of the list. But if you do make a mistake during leveling, don't get too stressed out, because there is an option to respec your character later in the game. Simply return to the bridge of your void ship, find the character named Janice Denrock, he's close to the map table, and select the training dialogue option to respec your character. Number 6, loot absolutely everything. Unlike the Pathfinder games, there is no carry weight to limit the amount of loot you can haul. Throughout your journey, you'll run across a ton of cargo, junk weapons, and armor. There's so much loot that I started leaving behind a bunch of crappier gear, but this turned out to be a mistake, because I later learned that you can trade not only cargo, but excess weapons and armor in order to build your trade reputation with various factions. Reputation allows you to unlock new items in the trade menu, and some of these upgrades are incredibly powerful. So those extra scrappy shotguns and low-level armor pieces could provide the extra boost you need to get your reputation to the next level and unlock this gear. Number 7, tips for avoiding friendly fire. AoE abilities are super important and powerful in Rogue Trader. Grenade tosses, lightning arcs, and multi-shot guns can target multiple enemies in a single go. But the downside is that they can hit your companions as well. Where possible, I recommend launching your AoE attacks before rushing in with your melee characters. And in cases where your melee characters are already in the mix, see if you can reposition your AoE character or the arc of their attack to avoid hitting friendlies. You can preview where your attack will likely hit before initiating, so choose wisely. If friendly fire is unavoidable, sometimes it's still worth taking the attack if it means one-shotting 2 or more enemies in the process. I know I've hit Abelard and Pascal with Adira's lightning arc on more than one occasion. Sorry, bro. Number 8, initiate sneak attacks outside of combat. Only fools rush in. If you see a group of enemies off in the distance, don't feel obligated to just rush ahead to initiate combat. You can actually launch a sneak attack before combat begins. Simply select a character with a ranged weapon, select an attack, and target one of the enemies in your line of sight. The good news is, if your attack misses, the enemies won't seem to notice, allowing you to make a few free attacks until you score a hit. This is a good way to sneak in some extra damage before the turn-based combat begins, and can help you avoid an ambush in some cases. Number 9, save often. This is mostly a note to self at this point because despite playing tons of CRPGs, I always seem to forget to quick save and end up losing progress because of it. Rogue Trader doesn't autosave that often, mainly just before certain story beats or where you enter specific areas. And unlike Baldur's Gate 3, you cannot save the game in combat, so be sure to quick save while exploring out in the world, just in case. Number 10, other useful UI quirks. This is another grab bag of things to help navigating the UI a bit easier. Your quest journal displays all quests by default, which will start to get very messy very fast as you pick up and complete more quests. So I recommend unchecking the box to display completed quests, so that way you only see the active ones. This will keep your quest log a bit cleaner. When speaking with characters, you can scroll up to see previous dialogue options and conversation. Rogue Trader is very dense with lore and dialogue, so this is nice if you didn't fully absorb something or want to review what a character just told you. And finally, you can highlight interactable objects and character nameplates by pressing or holding the Tab key. I pretty much keep the Tab key pressed down the entire time I'm exploring so I can find quest-related NPCs or loot I may have missed. So there you have it, 10 things I wish I knew before playing Warhammer 40K Rogue Trader. I will be posting more guides and tip videos for the game over the next few weeks, so be sure to subscribe to Big Dan Gaming for more Warhammer content. If you're interested in picking up the game, check out the link in the description. Big shout out to Owlcat Games for sponsoring this video and providing me with early access to the game. And as always, big shout out to all the channel members for supporting my content. Until next time, this has been Big Dan. I should go.